I am so OCD.
You sure about that?
I don't think it means what you think it means.
Am I the only one around here who gives about the rules?
Well, don't worry, because we're going to talk about it. OCD stands for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM if you're nasty, defines OCD as being characterized by the presence of either obsessions, compulsions, or both. Generally, individuals who meet the criteria for an OCD diagnosis experience both, in the form of a repetitive cycle. Unwanted obsessions lead the individual to do a compulsion, which relieves their distress until the obsession takes hold again. At this point, the person will do another anxiety-relieving compulsion, which will give them temporary relief until the obsession takes hold again. And so on and over and over and over and over and over and over. For example, for someone who has obsessions around contamination, the cycle may look something like this. Oh dear, I've touched something I feel is contaminated. Oh no, this brings me a lot of anxiety. I better go wash my hands. I wash my hands. I temporarily feel better until I end up feeling recontaminated and have to do it all over again. And what's worse is this cycle often escalates the more you participate in it. Eventually, maybe washing them doesn't relieve the anxiety at all. So, you put in place measures to prevent being contaminated in the first place. Maybe you stop touching objects in public areas. But wait, then you realize it isn't just touch. Viruses can be airborne, so you begin holding your breath in crowded spaces. But wait, then you realize you've been putting in all this work to remain uncontaminated, but you're coming home and relaxing in clothes that have been in the dirty outside world all day. So you start to remove your outside clothes as soon as you come in the door, and then you immediately take a shower and get into your clean indoor clothes. Simple enough. But wait, the rest of your family is out all day in the same dirty world, so they'll need to strip and shower as soon as they come through the door too. But then you realize it's kind of foolish to go outdoors at all because you can't control what you come in contact with. So you decide it's best to not leave the house unless absolutely necessary. But of course your family still leaves and then they're bringing the germs in with them, so maybe it's best not to leave your bedroom, and it goes on and on and on like this. So the contamination is the obsession, and the increasingly demanding behaviors to stave off that contamination are the compulsions. And most people think liking things organized or being a germaphobe like this is what OCD is, but that's only half true. While the cycle of obsessions and compulsions are present for everyone with OCD, the content of those obsessions, and therefore the behaviors that constitute a compulsion, can be literally anything. And many people's obsessions are, to put it scientifically, fucked up. And this makes sense, right? In order for obsessions to stick, they need to cause distress. So it only stands to reason that the more distressing the thought is, the more likely it is to become an obsession to someone who has OCD. And this is why obsessions and OCD are ego-dystonic. And I know what you're thinking. Okay, you big-brained learned doctor. What does ego-dystonic mean? Well, ego-dystonic just means that the thought, feeling, or behavior is totally inconsistent with your values. Okay, so it's not always about contamination or getting sick or liking things neat. So what else can it be about? Well, there are a few really common themes in OCD, and they are harm OCD, social orientation OCD, suicide OCD, moral and scrupulosity OCD, existential OCD, paranoid OCD, relationship OCD, and postpartum OCD. Now remember, the reason that these thoughts get stuck in the sufferer's mind is because they're ego-dystonic. It causes them distress. It goes against their morals or their sense of self. So let's take a look at an example that's more mental and less outward-facing than contamination was. Harm. Harm OCD is characterized by obsessions that you may harm someone else or yourself. And look, we all have intrusive thoughts, but we don't all have OCD. Let's assume for a minute you're cutting up some of them sweet, sweet peppers for dinner, when suddenly you think, wouldn't it be crazy if I slipped and this knife cut right into my wrist and I bled out all over this counter? I'm sorry, what? Excuse me? Most people would find that thought distressing, but most people would recognize it as just that, a thought. Harmless. They may pay so little attention to it that they don't even recall having it a few seconds later. People with OCD want to know why they had this thought. Does having that thought mean I want to hurt myself? Am I a danger to myself? Does it mean I want to die? Maybe it means I like the idea of cutting someone. Holy that's scary. Holy and then boom, we have an obsession. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do something to relieve this anxiety. So maybe I say to my friend, hey friend, Have I ever seemed like a violent person to you? What an odd question, the friend says. Nah, dude, you're a gentle little guy. And boom, we've performed a compulsion. And although I do feel a little better now that my friend said something so sweet, I start to feel anxious again later that night. So I Google most common signs that someone is violent. And boom, there's another compulsion. But it's cool because none of the stuff I found sounds like me until I start to worry about it again. It's there again. Yeah, the Googling didn't help either. So I'm going to go ahead and do just one more compulsion. And pretty soon my Google search history looks like I'm writing a book about serial killers with all this reassurance seeking. And that's the thing. That's what's so hard. Compulsions work for a little bit. But over time, OCD demands that they're more and more frequent and more drastic because the anxiety is no longer relieved with just one little compulsion. It's very important you don't feed OCD. And this brings us back to one of the main points in that DSM diagnostic criteria. The obsessions and compulsions cause marked distress, are time-consuming, taking more than 1 hour a day, or significantly interfere with the person's normal routine, occupational functioning, or usual social activities or relationships. Okay, so now we know what OCD is. We know it involves obsessions, compulsions, and relief. We know this cycle only makes OCD grow and get worse. So if you're someone that has OCD or you think you might have OCD, you're probably thinking, great. So I feel panicked. You're telling me the thing I do to make myself feel better and get through my day just makes this worse in the long run and I shouldn't do it anymore. So what should I do then, Mr. Smart Guy? That's a fair question. And this is where we get to what is the gold standard treatment for OCD. This is a specific type of cognitive behavioral therapy that involves gradually exposing patients to their fears and preventing what is likely their natural response, a compulsion. And this therapy is hard. It's difficult, it seems counterintuitive, and frankly, it sucks. But what it does provide is better than instant relief. It gives you a long-term strategy to take your life back. Short-term pain for long-term gain. Let's say you're obsessing over whether you will lose your mind, and I've been there. Your natural response might be to avoid anything that depicts mental illness. Films, books, conversations, other people. That's what feeds the OCD cycle. Avoidance and compulsions. So ERP would ask you to instead engage with those things on purpose. But that's only half of it. Once your anxiety rises, you also have to resist doing a compulsion. And instead, just sit with the anxiety. For some, this is going to feel pointless and maybe even impossible at first, but it's neither. By exposing yourself to the source of your fear and preventing yourself from performing an anxiety-relieving compulsion, you are teaching your brain that the fear is unnecessary, and therefore so are the compulsions. And while it might be really hard, it's incredibly effective. ERP forces you to do everything that OCD tells you shouldn't, and in the process, it kicks the shit out of it. And for some individuals, in combination with exposure response prevention, medication can be incredibly helpful as well. But, and I hope this goes without saying, talk to a doctor, not an idiot on YouTube. So most importantly, where can you go if you or someone you love needs help? Well, a great place to start is the International OCD Foundation. Their website has a ton of resources to connect you with vetted and reliable places to get help. And if you're fortunate enough to have insurance, which I totally understand is not a given, make sure that your therapist is utilizing ERP. Because while talk therapy and other forms of therapy are wonderful treatments for other things, they can actually exacerbate OCD. So that's it. Thank you for listening to me ramble about this. I'm going to put the link to the International OCD Foundation in the description below, as well as a couple other resources that I've personally utilized, and hope all my fellow people out there with a little bit of a messed up brain are doing all right. Thanks.